Block 1. The clink of silverware against porcelain plates filled the dimly lit restaurant, a symphony of wealth I had grown accustomed to, but never felt part of. My feet ached in the mandatory 3-inch heels, uniform black dress clinging to my body after an 8-hour shift that had stretched into 10. I navigated between tables with practiced ease, balancing trays that cost more than my monthly rent at the rundown apartment I called home. "Table 7 needs their check, Ellie," Marco, the floor manager, whispered as I passed by the bar, his breath hot against my ear. "And the VIP section just got a new reservation. You're up." I nodded, suppressing a sigh. VIP section meant bigger tips, but also more scrutiny, more smiles I didn't feel, more unwanted hands brushing mine when I served drinks. But I needed the money. The stack of medical bills for my younger sister's treatments grew taller each month, and my father's gambling debts weren't paying themselves. "Sure thing," I replied, tucking a strand of chestnut hair behind my ear, the same motion I'd performed 1,000 times when switching into autopilot mode. Invisible but efficient, that was my specialty. I finished with table 7, pocketing a measly 5% tip from businessmen who had spent 3 hours discussing mergers over $300 bottles of wine. Straightening my spine, I smoothed down my dress and headed toward the VIP section, a secluded area behind heavy velvet curtains where Chicago's elite could dine without the prying eyes of commoners like me. The moment I pushed aside the curtain, the atmosphere shifted. The air felt heavier, charged with something I couldn't name but instantly recognized as danger. 4 men occupied the largest table, but only one commanded attention. He sat with his back to the wall, facing the entrance, a position I'd noticed powerful men always chose. Dark eyes surveyed the room with calculated indifference, his fingers drumming a slow, deliberate rhythm on the white tablecloth. He wasn't particularly large, but something about his presence made the spacious room feel claustrophobic. His suit, charcoal gray and impeccably tailored, whispered of money that didn't need to announce itself. The 2 men flanking him wore similar suits, but remained utterly forgettable beside him. The 4th man, sitting across from them, fidgeted nervously with his napkin. I approached with the professional smile I'd perfected over years. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Salvatore's. My name is Ellie, and I'll be your server tonight." The nervous man glanced up briefly. The 2 bodyguards didn't acknowledge me at all. But the one in the middle? He studied me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. His gaze traveled slowly from my face down to my hands, lingering just long enough to make me shift my weight uncomfortably. "What can I get you to drink?" I asked, pulling out my notepad, ignoring the way my pulse quickened under his scrutiny. "The 1982 Lafite," he said, his voice lower and softer than I expected. He didn't look at the wine list. Men like him never did. I nodded, writing it down though I didn't need to. A bottle worth more than 3 months of my salary. "Excellent choice. And for appetizers?" He waved his hand dismissively. "You choose. Something appropriate for the wine." It wasn't a request. It was a test. I had worked at Salvatore's long enough to know the menu backwards and forwards, and despite my exhaustion, I met his eyes directly for the first time. The truffle risotto would pair beautifully, or perhaps the seared scallops with brown butter. A hint of surprise flickered across his face, quickly replaced by something else. Amusement, perhaps. The corner of his mouth twitched upward. "Both," he decided, "and the Wagyu for the main course. Rare." I finished taking their order, hyper-aware of his gaze following my every movement. When I turned to leave, his voice stopped me. "You're new." I faced him again, clutching my notepad. "To your table, yes. To Salvatore's, no. I've worked here for 3 years." Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. 3 years, he repeated, as if tasting the information. "And I'm only seeing you now?" One of his companions shifted uncomfortably. The nervous man across the table stared fixedly at his empty water glass. "I usually work the main floor," I explained, gesturing vaguely toward the curtain. "That's been corrected, it seems." He leaned back in his chair, still watching me with that unsettling intensity. "What's your name again?" "Ellie. Ellie Morgan." "Ellie Morgan," he echoed, and something about hearing my name in his mouth made it sound like it belonged to him now. I'm Alexander Vicario. The name hit me like a physical blow. Everyone in Chicago knew that name, or at least the whispers attached to it. The Vicario family controlled half the city, officially in real estate and shipping, unofficially in everything else that moved through Chicago's veins. I'd served countless wealthy patrons, but never anyone whose power extended beyond their money. I should have nodded respectfully and retreated to fetch his ridiculously expensive wine. That's what the invisible waitress was supposed to do. Instead, exhaustion and the weight of my sister's medical bills made me reckless. Am I supposed to be impressed, Mr. Vicario? The words slipped out before I could catch them. The room went deadly silent. The nervous man's face drained of color. One of the bodyguard's hands disappeared beneath his jacket. Alexander Vicario's expression, however, didn't change, except for his eyes, which narrowed almost imperceptibly. Excuse me? His voice remained soft, which somehow made it more terrifying than if he'd shouted, too late to backtrack. I asked if I'm supposed to be impressed by your name, I repeated, my heart hammering against my ribs. Because I'm more concerned with whether you'll tip appropriately on that $1,000 bottle of wine you just ordered. The silence stretched until it felt like a physical pressure against my skin. I was suddenly, painfully aware of how badly I had miscalculated. This wasn't some corporate executive I could sass for the amusement of my coworkers later. This was Alexander Vicario, a man who could make people disappear with a nod. When he finally spoke, his words were measured, each one placed with precision. You don't scare easily, do you, Ellie Morgan? Pride, my eternal downfall, made me lift my chin. You don't scare me, Mr. Vicario. The restaurant beyond the curtain continued its symphony of clinking glasses and murmured conversations. But inside our velvet-enclosed bubble, everything stopped. One of his men inhaled sharply. The nervous man looked like he might faint. Alexander's expression transformed so suddenly, it was like watching a mask slip. His lips curved into a smile that never reached his eyes, and he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Everyone goes silent when they're terrified, Ellie. Even the brave ones. He tilted his head slightly. Especially the brave ones. As if to illustrate his point, I realized I'd been holding my breath. I exhaled shakily, finally recognizing the magnitude of my mistake. The wine, I managed, desperate to escape. I'll get your wine. His smile widened. Yes, you will. He settled back in his chair, the picture of relaxed authority. And Ellie? You'll be my server exclusively from now on. Make the arrangements with management. It wasn't a request. I fled through the curtain, nearly colliding with Marco, who grabbed my arm. Are you insane? He hissed, pulling me toward the kitchen. Do you have any idea who that is? Alexander Vicario, I whispered, the name feeling dangerous on my tongue. Marco's face was ashen. He's been coming here for years, always requests Giovanni. Never speaks directly to the staff. He ran a trembling hand through his hair. What did you say to him? The whole room went silent. I was stupid, I admitted. I asked if I was supposed to be impressed by his name. Marco looked like he might be sick. Jesus, Ellie. He once had a busboy's fingers broken for spilling water on his shoes. He gripped my shoulders. Look, I'll get Giovanni to take over. You can work the back section tonight. No, I said, surprising myself. He specifically asked for me to continue serving him. Said I should make arrangements with management. Marco's grip tightened painfully. That's not good, Ellie. What choice do I have? I pulled away, moving toward the wine cellar. I need this job, Marco. I can't afford to lose it. There are other restaurants, he said, following me. I laughed bitterly. Not that would hire me after being fired from Salvatore's. I located the wine, a dust-covered bottle that rarely left its temperature-controlled sanctuary. Besides, my sister's treatment starts next week. I need the money now, not after a month of job hunting. Marco looked like he wanted to say more, but instead shook his head. Be careful, Ellie. Men like Vicario don't notice people like us unless they want something. I carried the wine back to the VIP section with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. When I pushed through the curtain, the nervous man was gone, leaving only Alexander and his two shadows. They fell silent as I approached. I presented the bottle with practiced movements, showing the label before opening it. Alexander watched my hands the entire time, his gaze so intense I nearly fumbled the corkscrew, something I hadn't done since my first month on the job. Pour, he instructed after approving the wine. I filled his glass, then moved to serve his companions. Only me, he said. I froze, then set the bottle down. The appetizers will be out shortly, I managed, turning to leave. Sit. The command stopped me in my tracks. I looked back, certain I'd misheard. Excuse me? He gestured to the empty chair beside him. Sit, have a glass of wine with me. I'm working, Mr. Vicario, and I own 60% of this restaurant, he replied casually, as if mentioning the weather. So technically, you're working for me right now. The revelation struck me like ice water. I'd had no idea Salvatore's was part of the Vicario empire. It explained why Marco was so terrified. One glass, he said, softer now, almost coaxing. Consider it an apology for frightening you. You didn't frighten me, I lied automatically. That dangerous smile returned. Sit down, Ellie Morgan. Before you say something else you'll regret. I sat, perched on the edge of the chair like a bird ready to take flight. He poured wine into the empty glass in front of me, his movements deliberate and controlled. The rich burgundy liquid caught the low light, swirling hypnotically. Try it, he urged. When I hesitated, he added, It's not poisoned. That would be wasteful with wine this expensive. I couldn't tell if he was joking. I took a small sip, the complex flavors exploding across my tongue, berries and oak and something earthier beneath. Despite everything, I couldn't help the small sound of appreciation that escaped me. Alexander watched me with evident satisfaction. Beautiful things should be appreciated properly, he said. And I had the uncomfortable feeling he wasn't talking about the wine. Why am I here? I asked bluntly. His eyebrows rose slightly. At my table, you mean? Yes, you could have had me fired. Or worse, apparently, I added, remembering Marco's story about the busboy. Alexander considered me for a long moment. You intrigue me, Ellie Morgan. He took a sip of his wine. Not many people would speak to me the way you did. Certainly none who know who I am. It was a mistake, I said quickly. I was tired and... No, he cut me off. It wasn't a mistake. It was honest, refreshingly so. He leaned closer, and I caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive and subtle, with notes of cedar and amber. Do you know how rarely I encounter honesty in my life? One of his men cleared his throat discreetly. Alexander shot him a look, and he immediately stood. We'll wait outside, boss, the man murmured, and both bodyguards disappeared through the curtain. Now we were alone, and the velvet-enclosed space felt intimate in a way that made my skin flush. Alexander studied me with those dark, penetrating eyes, as if he could see past my carefully constructed barriers. Tell me about yourself, Ellie Morgan, he said, refilling my glass though I'd barely touched it. There's nothing to tell, I replied. I'm a waitress. No one is just one thing. He gestured around us. This is what you do, not who you are. The wine must have affected my judgment because I found myself answering honestly. I take care of my sister. She's sick. Leukemia. My father can't be trusted with money, so it falls to me. I trace the stem of my glass. That's who I am. A caretaker, I suppose. Something shifted in his expression. A softening I wouldn't have thought possible. And no one takes care of you. It wasn't a question, but the simple truth of it made my throat tight. I manage. Alexander reached out, his fingers brushing against mine on the tablecloth. The touch sent an electric current up my arm. Everyone needs protection, Ellie, even the brave ones who claim not to be afraid. I pulled my hand away, suddenly aware of how dangerous the situation had become, not because I feared him, but because for a brief moment I'd wanted to lean into his touch. I should check on your appetizers, I said, standing abruptly. He let me go, but his voice followed me. This conversation isn't over, Ellie Morgan. It's just beginning. I pushed through the curtain, gulping the cooler air of the main restaurant. Whatever game Alexander Vicario was playing, I couldn't afford to be a part of it. Men like him didn't notice women like me without a reason, and that reason was seldom good. But as I moved toward the kitchen, I felt the weight of his gaze through the velvet curtain, and with it came the unsettling realization that I had somehow, in the span of one disastrous exchange, become visible to one of the most dangerous men in Chicago, and I had no idea what that would mean for my carefully balanced life. I managed to avoid returning to Alexander's table immediately by busying myself in the kitchen, pretending to supervise the preparation of his appetizers. Chef Paolo, a temperamental Italian who tolerated no interference, shot me suspicious glances as I hovered near his workspace. "Something wrong with my risotto?" he demanded, expertly folding truffle shavings into the creamy rice. "No, it's perfect," I assured him, my eyes fixed on the dish rather than meeting his questioning gaze. "Just, the customer is particular," Paolo snorted. "Vicario. He's always particular." He looked at me more closely. "Why are you serving him? Where's Giovanni?" I shrugged, aiming for nonchalance. "Manager's decision." The chef's wooden spoon paused mid-stir. "Be careful, ragazza. That man doesn't take interest in the staff. Ever." His voice lowered to a near whisper. "Until he does." A server brushed past me, breaking the moment. "Orders backing up, chef." Paolo returned to his work, and I seized the opportunity to escape his knowing eyes. I couldn't delay any longer. Gathering the appetizers onto a tray, I took a deep breath and pushed back through the curtain to the VIP section. Alexander sat alone now, his bodyguards nowhere in sight. He was reading something on his phone, but his eyes flickered up the moment I entered, as if he'd been waiting, counting the seconds of my absence. He set the device down immediately, giving me his full attention. "I thought perhaps you'd run away," he said, his tone light, but his eyes intense. "I don't run from difficult customers," I replied, setting down the risotto and scallops. "It's bad for tips." A smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Is that what I am to you? A difficult customer?" I arranged the plates carefully, using the moment to compose myself. "You're certainly the most demanding one I've had tonight." "Tonight?" He raised an eyebrow. "Not ever?" I straightened, meeting his gaze directly. I once served a table of Hollywood producers who ordered the entire dessert menu just to take Instagram photos, then sent it all back untouched. Alexander's laugh was unexpected, rich and genuine, transforming his face from intimidating to almost boyish. The change was so striking that I found myself staring, momentarily forgetting my fear. "Sit," he said again, but this time it sounded more like an invitation than a command. When I hesitated, he added, "Please." The please disarmed me. I sat down slowly, watching as he pushed the risotto toward me and kept the scallops for himself. "You're not eating," he observed. "When was your last meal?" The question caught me off guard. I tried to remember. A hastily eaten granola bar during my 5-minute break. Coffee for breakfast. "I'm fine," I said automatically. Alexander picked up his fork but didn't eat. That wasn't what I asked. Something about his persistence irritated me. "Why do you care when I last ate?" "Because you've been working for at least 8 hours, probably more," he said matter-of-factly. "You're pale. Your hands trembled slightly when you poured the wine, and you keep blinking slowly, fighting to stay alert." His eyes narrowed slightly. "You're exhausted and hungry, yet too proud to admit it." The accuracy of his assessment was unnerving. I picked up a fork, if only to prove him wrong, and took a small bite of the risotto. The flavors melted on my tongue, buttery, earthy, decadent, and I couldn't suppress a sigh of pleasure. Alexander watched me with evident satisfaction. "Better?" I nodded reluctantly, taking another bite. We ate in silence for a few moments. The situation so surreal, I wondered if exhaustion had finally pushed me into hallucinating. Here I was, sharing a meal with Alexander Vicario, a man whose name was whispered fearfully throughout Chicago. As if we were on some bizarre date. "Tell me about your sister," he said suddenly. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. "Why?" "Because I want to know what drives you." He set down his fork, giving me his complete attention. "What makes Ellie Morgan work double shifts with a smile, even when she's dead on her feet?" I should have given him some sanitized version of the truth, but something about his directness broke through my usual caution. "Lily's 16, diagnosed with leukemia last year. She needs a bone marrow transplant." I stared down at my plate. "Insurance covers part of it, but not enough." My father. I hesitated, then decided on honesty. He gambles. Whatever money comes in, it goes out twice as fast. So it's up to me. Alexander was silent for so long that I finally looked up. The expression on his face was difficult to read, something between anger and calculation. And the transplant? When is it scheduled? It's not yet. We're still saving. I pushed the risotto around my plate. At this rate, maybe in 6 months. That's too long, he said, his voice hardening. What's the total cost? Warning bells rang in my mind. Why are you asking me this? Alexander leaned forward. Let me help, Ellie. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. I don't need your charity, Mr. Vicario. Alexander, he corrected. And it's not charity. Then what is it? I challenged. You don't know me. You have no reason to help me or my sister. Something shifted in his expression. A flash of emotion quickly controlled. Perhaps I see something worth protecting. I'm not for sale, I said coldly, rising from my chair. His hand shot out, catching my wrist. His grip wasn't painful, but it was firm. A steel bracelet I couldn't easily escape. That's not what I'm suggesting. His voice had dropped to that dangerous softness again. Sit down, Ellie. Please. The please again. It sounded strange coming from him. A word I suspected he rarely used. I sank back into my chair, hyper-aware of his fingers still wrapped around my wrist, his thumb resting against my pulse point. I apologize if I offended you, he said, releasing me slowly, as if reluctant to break the contact. I'm not accustomed to resistance. I rubbed my wrist, though he hadn't hurt me. I'm not accustomed to mafia bosses taking an interest in my personal problems. He smiled slightly. So you do know who I am. Everyone knows the Vicario name. And yet you spoke to me as if I were any other customer. He studied me with renewed interest. That's either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Probably the latter, I admitted. Look, I should check on your main course. Alexander shook his head. My men will see to it that we're not disturbed. As if on cue, one of his bodyguards appeared with the Wagyu, setting it down before disappearing again. You're off duty now, Ellie Morgan. For the rest of the evening, you're my guest. My heart raced. I can't just stop working. I need this job. Your job is secure, he said dismissively, as is your income. He cut into the perfectly seared steak. Now tell me more about yourself. What do you do when you're not here or caring for your sister? The question caught me off guard. What did I do? I couldn't remember the last time I'd had free time. I read, I said finally. When I can stay awake long enough, mysteries mostly. Seeking solutions, he observed. Fitting. What about you? I asked, immediately regretting the question. People probably didn't ask Alexander Vicario about his hobbies, but he seemed pleased by my interest. I collect things, he said, watching me over the rim of his wineglass. Rare books, art, exceptional people. The way he looked at me when he said exceptional people made my skin flush hot. And which category do I fall into, mister? Vicario? Alexander. He corrected again. And I haven't decided yet. His eyes never left mine. But you've certainly captured my attention. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt a dangerous thrill, like standing at the edge of a precipice. Why? He considered the question seriously. In my world, Ellie, people either fear me or want something from me. Sometimes both. He set down his glass. You did neither. You looked me in the eye and challenged me. Do you know how rare that is? Maybe you need to meet more servers working double shifts, I suggested. We tend to lose our filter after hour 12. He laughed again, that same genuine sound that transformed his face. Perhaps, but I think it's more than exhaustion. He leaned closer. I think you're naturally fearless. I'm not, I admitted. I'm terrified most of the time, about my sister, about money, about the future. Yet here you are, having dinner with the man everyone else in this restaurant is afraid to look at directly. He had a point. Why wasn't I more afraid? Maybe I was too tired to access the proper amount of fear. Or maybe, a small voice whispered in my mind, you're drawn to him. The thought was so disturbing I pushed back my chair. I should go. My shift technically ended 20 minutes ago. Alexander's expression darkened. Do you have someone waiting for you? The possessive note in his voice should have alarmed me. Instead, it sent another inappropriate thrill through my body. Just my sister. She'll be wondering where I am. He studied me for a moment, then nodded once. My driver will take you home. That's not necessary. It's not a request, Ellie. His tone brooked no argument. It's nearly midnight. I won't have you taking public transportation at this hour. Before I could protest further, he pulled out his phone and sent a quick text. Anthony will meet you at the back entrance. He's discreet. The implication that I might want discretion made me frown. I have nothing to hide. Alexander's lips curved into that dangerous half-smile. Everyone has something to hide, Ellie. Some of us are just better at it than others. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a business card, offering it to me. My private number. If you need anything at all, you call me, day or night. I stared at the card, making no move to take it. Why would I need to call you? His expression grew serious, because the world is full of dangers, and now you're under my protection. I didn't ask for your protection, I said, even as I finally took the card, its heavy cardstock smooth between my fingers. You didn't have to. Alexander stood, buttoning his jacket with a fluid motion. I'll be back tomorrow night. Ask Marco to adjust your schedule accordingly. My head spun with the implications. You're not what? He challenged softly. Not interested? Not available? Not willing to see where this leads? He stepped closer, his scent enveloping me. Cedar, amber, and something uniquely him. Tell me to leave you alone, Ellie Morgan. Tell me you never want to see me again, and I'll walk away now. I opened my mouth, knowing what I should say, what any sane person would say when a notorious criminal offered his protection. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I found myself standing mutely, my body betraying me with its silence. Alexander's smile was victorious. As I thought. He brushed his fingers against my cheek, a touch so light it might have been imagined. Sweet dreams, Ellie. I'll see you tomorrow. He left without waiting for a response, leaving me alone in the VIP section with an empty wine bottle worth more than my car, and the unsettling realization that I was already in far too deep. The black SUV pulled up to my apartment building just before 1 a.m. Anthony, Alexander's driver, hadn't spoken a word during the entire ride except to ask for my address. His silence had given me too much time to think, to question the surreal evening and my own baffling reactions to a man I should have run from. Miss Morgan, Anthony said, breaking his silence as he pulled to a stop. The boss wanted me to give you this. He handed back a thick envelope. I stared at it suspiciously. What is this? Not for me to say, miss. His face remained impassive in the rearview mirror. But he was clear you were to take it. I accepted the envelope reluctantly, its weight substantial in my hands. Thank you for the ride. Anthony nodded once. I'll wait until you're safely inside. The concern for my safety would have seemed thoughtful if it hadn't felt so much like surveillance. I climbed out of the SUV, feeling the driver's eyes on me as I unlocked the front door of my building. A shabby 3-story walk-up that had seen better days several decades ago. Only when I was inside the dimly lit hallway did I hear the SUV pull away. I trudged up the stairs, my body finally registering the full extent of my exhaustion now that the strange adrenaline of the evening had worn off. The envelope grew heavier with each step, like a stone in my hand. I unlocked our apartment door as quietly as possible, not wanting to wake Lily if she'd managed to fall asleep. The small living room was dark except for the blue glow of the television, its volume turned low. On the pull-out couch that served as my bed, Lily was curled under a blanket, her thin frame barely making a dent in the cushions. Ellie, she called softly. Is that you? It's me, Lil. I set down my bag and the mysterious envelope on the kitchen counter. Why are you still up? It's late. Lily pushed herself into a sitting position, and my heart clenched at how much effort it seemed to take. At 16, she should have been vibrant, full of life. Instead, the leukemia had hollowed her out, leaving behind a ghost of the spirited girl she once was. Her once thick brown hair had thinned dramatically from the chemotherapy, and the dark circles under her eyes made her look decades older. Couldn't sleep, she said, attempting a smile. How was work? You're later than usual. I busied myself getting a glass of water, avoiding her perceptive gaze. It was interesting. Got assigned to the VIP section. Ooh, big spenders? Lily perked up. Better tips? I thought of Alexander Vicario, of his expensive wine and dangerous eyes. Something like that. I brought her a pill in the water. Time for your meds. She grimaced but took the pill obediently. Dad called. My back stiffened. What did he want? Same as always. Money. Lily picked at a loose thread on the blanket. He said he's got a sure thing this time. Just needs a small loan. Right, I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Just like the last sure thing that was supposed to pay for your treatment. I sat beside her, taking her cold hand in mine. Did he at least ask how you were feeling? The slight shake of her head was all the answer I needed. My father had checked out emotionally after my mother died 5 years ago, turning to gambling as his escape. When Lily's diagnosis came, he'd disappeared for weeks, returning only to ask for money for his latest scheme. I'm sorry, Lil. I squeezed her hand. You deserve better than this. We both do, she said. Her voice stronger than her frail body suggested, her eyes focused on something behind me. What's that? I followed her gaze to the envelope on the counter. Nothing. Just something from work. Lily raised an eyebrow, an expression that momentarily restored her to her pre-illness self. Skeptical, sharp-witted, missing nothing. Since when does Salvatore's hand out envelopes at 1 a.m.? I sighed, knowing she wouldn't let it drop. It's complicated. I had a strange encounter with a customer tonight. Strange how? She sat up straighter, interest brightening her pale face. How could I possibly explain Alexander Vicario to my teenage sister? I settled for a heavily edited version. Just some rich guy who took an interest in me. Probably left me his number or something. Ellie. For a moment, excitement overrode Lily's exhaustion. Was he cute? The question caught me off guard. Was Alexander attractive? Objectively, yes. In that dangerous, untouchable way of a predator. His features were striking rather than conventionally handsome. His intensity more compelling than his actual appearance. He was interesting, I hedged. Lily rolled her eyes. Which means yes, but you don't want to admit it. She gestured to the envelope. Aren't you going to open it? I hesitated, then retrieved the envelope. It was sealed with no markings on the outside. When I tore it open, I gasped. Inside was a thick stack of $100 bills, more cash than I'd ever seen in one place. Holy shit, Lily breathed, her eyes wide. Is that real? My hands trembled as I thumbed through the stack. $10,000 at least. Tucked among the bills was a note written in elegant, strong handwriting. For Lily's treatment. This isn't charity. It's an investment in your peace of mind. Call me tomorrow. Ellie? Lily's voice seemed to come from far away. What is it? What does it say? I shoved everything back into the envelope, my mind racing. Nothing. It's just a mistake. I have to return it. Return what? Lily tried to reach for the envelope, but I held it away. Ellie, what's going on? Who gave you that money? I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to think clearly through the fog of exhaustion and shock. Someone who's used to buying what he wants, I said finally. And what does he want? Lily asked, her voice small. That was the question, wasn't it? What did Alexander Vicario want from me? Protection, he'd said. But protection from what? And at what cost? I don't know, I admitted, but I can't keep this. Lily's face fell. Is it enough for my treatment? The hope in her voice broke something inside me. Here was my sister, battling for her life, while I wrestled with my pride. The transplant she needed couldn't wait 6 more months. Her body was growing weaker by the day. It's dirty money, Lil, I said softly. We don't know where it came from. Does it matter? Lily challenged, a spark of her old fire returning. If it could save my life? I had no answer for her. Instead, I tucked the envelope into my bag, out of sight. Let's get some sleep. I'll figure it out tomorrow. Lily didn't argue, her brief surge of energy already fading. I helped her back to her bedroom, the only proper bedroom in our tiny apartment, and tucked her in like I used to when she was small. Love you, weirdo, I whispered. Our childhood goodnight ritual. Love you too, freak, she murmured back, her eyes already closing. I returned to the living room and unfolded my sofa bed, my body aching for rest, but my mind spinning too fast for sleep. Alexander's card seemed to burn through my bag. I pulled it out, running my finger over the embossed lettering. Just his name and a phone number, no company or title, because everyone already knew who he was. I should call the police, or at least return the money tomorrow with a firm message to leave me alone. That's what a sensible person would do when a known criminal started showing an interest in them. But Lily's question echoed in my mind. Does it matter where it came from if it could save my life? I fell into a fitful sleep, Alexander's dark eyes following me into my dreams. Morning came too soon, gray light filtering through the threadbare curtains. I had the late shift at Salvatore's, which meant I could drop Lily at her treatment before heading to work. As I made coffee, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Hello? I answered cautiously. Ellie. Alexander's voice was unmistakable, even through the phone. Did you sleep well? I glanced toward Lily's closed door, lowering my voice. How did you get my number? Does it matter? I could hear the smile in his voice. Did you receive my gift? It's not a gift I can accept, I said firmly. I'll return it tonight. A pause. Your sister's treatment can't wait, Ellie. Her next session is today, isn't it? At Chicago Memorial. Ice ran through my veins. How do you know that? I make it my business to know things, he said simply. Especially about people who interest me. This is crossing a line, I hissed. You can't just... I've arranged for Lily to see Dr. Levine today, he continued as if I hadn't spoken. He's the best oncologist in the Midwest. He'll oversee her transplant personally. My knees weakened, and I sank into a kitchen chair. Why are you doing this? Another pause, longer this time. Let's discuss it tonight. My driver will pick you up after your shift. Alexander, use the money, Ellie, he said, his voice softer now. For Lily. Whatever exists between us is separate from that. I give you my word. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat staring at my phone, torn between outrage at his presumption and a desperate, shameful relief. Dr. Levine was indeed the best, renowned for his groundbreaking treatments, with a waiting list months long, the kind of doctor we could never afford, never even dream of accessing. Who was that? Lily asked from her doorway, startling me. I plastered on a smile. Just work. Confirming my shift. I held up the coffee pot. Want some? She nodded, shuffling to the table. Did you figure out what to do about the money? I busied myself pouring her coffee, avoiding her eyes. Not yet. You're going to return it, aren't you? She added too much sugar to her cup, one of the few tastes she could still enjoy. Because you're too proud. It's not about pride, Lil, I argued, though part of me knew she was right. It's about not getting involved with dangerous people. Is he dangerous? She asked, suddenly interested. The guy who gave it to you? I thought about how to answer. Yes, I said finally. He's the kind of man people cross the street to avoid. But not you, Lily observed shrewdly. You don't seem afraid of him. I should be, I admitted. Any sane person would be. Lily sipped her coffee, watching me over the rim. Sometimes I think you want a little danger, Ellie. You've been taking care of everyone else for so long. Maybe part of you wants someone to shake things up. Her insight was disturbing. Was that it? Was I secretly craving something to break the monotony of my careful, responsible life? We should get ready, I said, changing the subject. Your appointment is at 10. Lily finished her coffee and disappeared into the bathroom. I pulled out my phone again, staring at Alexander's number. Against my better judgment, I sent a text. I'll meet with you tonight, but I make no promises about anything else. His response was immediate. I never expected promises, Ellie. Only possibilities. The word lingered in my mind as I helped Lily get dressed. Possibilities. When was the last time my life had contained those? For years, I'd been focused solely on survival, mine and Lily's. One day at a time, one bill at a time, one crisis at a time. And now Alexander Vicario had burst into my carefully controlled existence, offering something I hadn't dared to imagine. Options. Choices beyond the next meal, the next shift, the next medical bill. The knowledge that I was actually considering his offer terrified me more than the man himself. When we arrived at the hospital, I was shocked to find a private nurse waiting for us in the lobby. "Miss Morgan?" She greeted us professionally. "I'm Nurse Chen. Dr. Levine is expecting you and Lily." Lily shot me a confused look. "Dr. Levine? Isn't Dr. Patterson my doctor?" I swallowed hard. "Let's just see what he has to say, okay?" As we followed Nurse Chen to an elevator that required a key card, I felt as though I'd already made my decision without ever speaking it aloud. I had accepted Alexander's help, and whatever consequences came with it. The question now was, what would he expect in return? Dr. Levine was nothing like I'd imagined. I had expected an imperious older man, the type who'd accumulated enough prestige to have patients waiting months for 5 minutes of his time. Instead, he was surprisingly young, early 40s at most, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a gentle manner that immediately put Lily at ease. "Miss Morgan?" He greeted me with a firm handshake before turning to my sister. "And you must be Lily. I've reviewed your file extensively." The private consultation room was nicer than any medical space I'd ever been in, more like a comfortable office than a sterile examination room. No plastic chairs or fluorescent lighting, just soft furnishings and discreet medical equipment. "I don't understand," I said, struggling to maintain my composure. "We've been seeing Dr. Patterson. We were never referred to you." Dr. Levine nodded, his expression carefully neutral. "Let's just say a mutual friend thought I might offer some additional perspectives on Lily's case." He glanced at his tablet. "I understand you've been waiting for a bone marrow transplant. We're still saving for it," I explained, hyper-aware of Lily's attentive gaze. "Insurance only covers part. That's been taken care of," Dr. Levine interrupted smoothly. "We've already identified several potential donors who are excellent matches. I'd like to schedule the procedure for next week." The room seemed to tilt beneath me. "Next week? But that's impossible. The waiting list has been circumvented," he finished, meeting my eyes with a look that conveyed he understood exactly who had arranged this. "Sometimes, Miss Morgan, it's best not to question good fortune." Lily reached for my hand, her fingers cold but her grip surprisingly strong. "Ellie, is this for real?" I looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time in months, beyond the pallor and weight loss, I saw something I hadn't seen in too long. Hope. She was 16, with her whole life ahead of her. If she could just get past this hurdle, what was my pride worth compared to that? "Yes," I said, the decision solidifying with each passing second. "It's real." The rest of the appointment passed in a blur of medical terms, treatment plans, and scheduling details. Dr. Levine was thorough, explaining everything with a patience I'd never experienced from medical professionals before. By the time we left, Lily had undergone additional tests, received new medication, and had been scheduled for her transplant the following Tuesday. "I feel like I'm dreaming," Lily said as we left the hospital, more energetic than I'd seen her in months. "How did this happen, Ellie? Really?" I helped her into a taxi, avoiding her question. "Let's just be grateful, okay? It's him, isn't it?" she pressed. "The dangerous man who's not dangerous to you." I sighed, knowing I couldn't hide the truth from her forever. "His name is Alexander, and he has connections." "What kind of connections make the best oncologist in Chicago clear his schedule for us?" Her eyes narrowed. "Ellie, who exactly is this guy?" Before I could formulate a sanitized answer, the taxi driver glanced in his rearview mirror. "Alexander Vicario?" he asked, his expression changing from bored to alert. "The Alexander Vicario?" Lily's eyes widened. "Vicario? As in the family that—" "We're not discussing this now," I cut in firmly, giving the driver a warning look. He raised his hands briefly from the wheel. "Hey, no judgment. Man's got half the city in his pocket. Good to have friends in high places, right?" Lily fell silent, but I could practically hear the wheels turning in her mind. When we reached our apartment, she waited until we were inside before rounding on me. "Alexander Vicario, the mafia boss? That's your interesting customer?" Her voice rose with each word. "Ellie, what the hell? Lower your voice," I hissed, though there was no one to hear us. "It's not what you think." "Really?" "Because I think a notorious criminal has taken an interest in my sister." and suddenly we're getting VIP medical treatment. She crossed her arms, looking more like her pre-illness self than she had in months. What does he want from you? That was the question I'd been avoiding since last night. I don't know, I admitted. He says he just wants to help. Lily's laugh was sharp and disbelieving. Men like that don't just help without expecting something in return. I know that, I snapped, running a hand through my hair. Don't you think I know that? But what choice do I have, Lily? You need this transplant. We were months away from affording it, and your condition is deteriorating every day. Her anger deflated as quickly as it had risen. She sank onto the sofa, suddenly looking small again. So what, you're going to be his… what? To save me? The unspoken implication hung in the air between us. I sat beside her, taking her hands. No, that's not what this is about. He's been clear that the medical help comes with no strings attached. And you believe him? Did I? I wasn't sure. But something in Alexander's eyes when he'd spoken about protection, about seeing something worth preserving, it hadn't felt like the calculation of a man looking to add another possession to his collection. I'm meeting him tonight, I said finally. To establish boundaries. Lily's expression softened with concern. Be careful, Ellie. Men like that are used to getting what they want. I kissed her forehead, inhaling the familiar scent of her shampoo. I've been handling difficult men since Dad started gambling. I'll be fine. But as I prepared for my shift at Salvatore's, Alexander's words echoed in my mind. Everyone needs protection, Ellie, even the brave ones who claim not to be afraid. The restaurant was unusually busy for a weeknight. I moved through my tables on autopilot, my mind elsewhere as I took orders and delivered food. Marco watched me with unconcealed concern, pulling me aside during a brief lull. You okay? He asked, his voice low. You seem distracted. I'm fine, I assured him. Just a lot on my mind. He glanced around nervously before leaning closer. Vicario called earlier, said you're to be relieved at 9, not 11. My stomach tightened. Marco, I need the hours. I can't… Trust me, he interrupted. You don't want to argue with him about this. He was… insistent. Marco squeezed my shoulder sympathetically. Look, whatever's happening, just be smart, okay? Men like him see people as commodities. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The rest of my shift passed too quickly, and at precisely 9 o'clock, Marco appeared to take over my section. His car is waiting at the back, he said, not meeting my eyes. I changed out of my uniform in the cramped employee bathroom, studying my reflection in the spotted mirror. Dark circles shadowed my eyes, and my skin looked pale despite my attempts with makeup. I released my hair from its functional bun, letting it fall in waves around my shoulders. The gesture felt significant somehow, a deliberate choice to present myself differently than the invisible waitress Alexander had first encountered. Anthony was waiting by the same black SUV, opening the door without a word when he saw me approach. I slid into the back seat, half expecting to find Alexander there. Instead, I was alone. The privacy partition between me and the driver, already raised. We drove for about 20 minutes, leaving the familiar grid of downtown Chicago behind for the affluent lakeside neighborhoods. The SUV eventually pulled up to a modern glass and steel building overlooking Lake Michigan, the kind of luxury high-rise I usually only saw from a distance. Mr. Vicario is waiting for you on the penthouse level, Anthony informed me, breaking his customary silence. The elevator requires a key card. He handed me a sleek black card. He said to tell you that you're free to leave at any time. Just call down and I'll bring you home. The implied choice was both reassuring and unsettling. I took the card, gripping it like a talisman as I entered the building's marble lobby. The concierge nodded to me with deference, as if he'd been expecting me, making no move to stop me as I headed for the private elevator at the back. The card unlocked the elevator, which began its smooth ascent without me pressing any buttons. My heart raced as the numbers climbed higher, until finally, the doors opened directly into a spectacular penthouse apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased a breathtaking panorama of the Chicago skyline and the dark expanse of Lake Michigan beyond. The space was minimalist, but luxurious, all clean lines, expensive materials, and carefully curated art. not at all the ostentatious display of wealth I might have expected. Ellie. I turned toward Alexander's voice. He stood by a wall of windows, silhouetted against the glittering city lights. He'd exchanged his business suit for dark jeans and a simple black shirt that somehow looked more expensive than formal wear. In this setting, away from the restaurant, he seemed both more relaxed and more powerful, a predator in his natural habitat. "Your sister saw Dr. Levine today," he said. Not a question, but a statement. I nodded, finding my voice. "The transplant is scheduled for Tuesday." Alexander smiled, satisfaction evident in his expression. "He's the best. Lily will receive excellent care. Why?" The question burst from me, all my carefully prepared speeches forgotten. "Why are you doing this? What do you want from me?" He moved toward me slowly, like someone approaching a skittish animal. "Would you like a drink first?" "No. I want answers." Alexander gestured to a sleek leather sofa. "Then let's sit, and I'll explain exactly what I want from you, Ellie Morgan." I perched on the edge of the sofa, my body tense as he sat beside me, close, but not touching. The scent of his cologne enveloped me again, now familiar in a way that was both comforting and alarming. "From the moment you looked me in the eye and told me I didn't scare you," he began, his voice low and intense, "I knew you were different, rare." I met his gaze steadily, determined not to show weakness. "That doesn't answer my question, doesn't it?" He leaned closer. "What I want, Ellie, is you, not as a possession or a conquest, but as something far more valuable." His eyes held mine, dark and unreadable. "A partner." The word hung between us, loaded with implications I couldn't fully comprehend. A partner in what exactly? Alexander's smile was enigmatic, with a hint of danger that made my pulse quicken despite myself. "In everything." "In everything?" I repeated, the vague answer frustrating me. "That's not an explanation, Alexander. That's an evasion." Something like admiration flickered in his eyes. "Most people don't press me for clarity." "I'm not most people," I countered. "And if you're asking me to be your partner, whatever that means, I deserve specifics." Alexander studied me for a long moment, then rose from the sofa and moved to a cabinet across the room. He poured 2 glasses of amber liquid, returning to offer me one despite my earlier refusal. This time I accepted it, needing something to steady my nerves. "Let me tell you a story, Ellie," he said, settling back beside me. "About a boy who grew up watching his father build an empire through fear, who learned that power meant everyone around you was either an enemy or a servant." He swirled his drink, his gaze distant. "This boy promised himself he would find a different way, that when his time came, he would lead with something stronger than fear." "And did he?" I asked softly, drawn into the narrative despite myself. Alexander's smile was tinged with bitterness. He tried. When his father died and he took control at 25, he began changing things, moving into legitimate businesses, creating a foundation that actually helped people, not just laundered money. He took a sip of his drink, but the old guards, his father's men, they saw this as weakness. 3 months after he took over, they tried to kill him. I gasped involuntarily, my eyes drawn to a small, barely noticeable scar at his temple, just below his hairline. "They failed, obviously," he continued, touching the scar briefly. "And he learned a difficult lesson. Change must come slowly in our world. Too fast, and you don't live to see it happen at all." "So you've been playing a long game," I surmised, beginning to understand. He nodded. "For 8 years now. Maintaining enough of the old ways to keep my position secure, while gradually steering the Vicario empire toward legitimacy." His eyes locked with mine. "But it's a delicate balance. The men around me, they watch for any sign of weakness, any vulnerability they can exploit." "What does this have to do with me?" I asked, though I was starting to see the connection. Alexander set his glass down and turned fully toward me, his expression more open than I'd yet seen it. "In my world, Ellie, relationships are transactional. Marriages are alliances. Children are heirs. Love is a luxury few can afford, and a vulnerability none can risk showing." My heart quickened at the word love, though he'd used it abstractly. "And yet here you are, Arranging specialized medical care for a waitress's sister after one conversation. That doesn't seem very strategic. It's precisely strategic, he countered. But not in the way you think. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. Do you know what I saw when you looked me in the eye and told me I didn't scare you? I saw honesty, integrity, courage. Qualities my father would have called weaknesses, but which I recognize as strengths. You don't know me, I protested. One interaction isn't enough to— I know everything about you, Ellie Morgan. He interrupted gently. After our meeting, I had you thoroughly investigated, not just surface details, your credit score, your work history, but the essence of who you are. I stiffened. You had me investigated? I did. He admitted without apology. I learned how you took over caring for your sister at 22, when your father's gambling left you both vulnerable. How you work 3 jobs during summer breaks to cover Lily's medications. How despite being offered easier ways to make money, you've never compromised your principles. His expression softened. I learned that you're exactly who I thought you were. Someone rare and valuable. The intensity of his gaze made me look away. I took a sip of my drink, the expensive whiskey burning a path down my throat. So what exactly are you proposing? That I become your— what, girlfriend? Wife? Trophy on your arm to show your enemies you have a human side? Alexander laughed, the sound rich and genuine. Nothing so simplistic. He reached for my hand, his touch sending electricity up my arm. What I'm proposing, Ellie, is a partnership in the truest sense. I want you by my side as I complete the transformation of my family's legacy. Not as window dressing, but as my equal. My conscience, my clarity, my courage when mine falters, my mind reeled at the implications. You're asking me to join the Mafia. I'm asking you to help me dismantle it, he corrected. To finish what I started 8 years ago, turning a criminal empire into a legitimate business force for good. It was so far from what I had expected that I couldn't formulate a response. Alexander seemed to take my silence as skepticism. I understand your hesitation, he said. It sounds impossible, dangerous, perhaps even delusional. His thumb traced circles on my palm. But with the right partner, someone who sees the world as it could be, not just as it is, I believe it's possible. Why me? I finally managed. There must be dozens of women in your social circle better positioned to help you. Women with connections, education, influence. Women who want my money, my power, or both, he countered. Women who would never tell me when I'm wrong or stand their ground when tested. His fingers tightened around mine. I need someone real, Ellie, someone unafraid of the truth, someone whose moral compass doesn't waver. Like a waitress who told you that you don't scare her, I said softly. His smile was answer enough. I pulled my hand away, needing distance to think clearly. This is insane. 24 hours ago, I was just trying to make rent. Now you're offering me— what? A place in your world? Access to your resources? Protection for Lily and myself? All of that, he confirmed. But I'm also asking for something in return. Something far more valuable than your companionship, though I want that too. His expression grew serious. I'm asking for your trust, Ellie, and your commitment to seeing this through, no matter how difficult it becomes. I stood, needing to move, to breathe. I walked to the wall of windows, gazing out at the city spread below. A city partially controlled by the man sitting behind me. From this height, Chicago looked like a collection of lights and shadows, beautiful but distant. Was that how Alexander saw the world? As something to be admired from afar, controlled but never truly connected to. What happens to Lily's treatment if I say no? I asked, my back still to him. I heard him rise, felt his presence behind me, though he didn't touch me. Nothing changes. The arrangements are made, the expenses covered. That was never conditional. Relief flooded through me, followed quickly by confusion. Then why would I say yes, if you're already giving me what I need most? Alexander moved to stand beside me, his reflection visible in the glass. Because I'm offering you something beyond security, Ellie. I'm offering you purpose, impact, the chance to help reshape a system that's caused immeasurable harm. His voice lowered. And yes, I'm offering you myself, flawed as I am. I turned to face him, studying the lines of his face, the sharp jawline, the intensity in his dark eyes, the small scar that told a story of survival. Was I actually considering this insane proposal? Stepping into a world of danger and power, of luxury and shadows? I need time, I said finally. This is overwhelming. Of course, he agreed readily. Take all the time you need. And I have conditions, I continued, surprising myself with my boldness. If, and it's a big if, I agree to this partnership, it would be real, equal. I wouldn't be a figurehead or a pretty distraction. Alexander's eyes lit with something like triumph. I would expect nothing less. Lily comes first, I added. Her health, her future, they're non-negotiable priorities. Already arranged. The treatment is just the beginning. I've established a trust for her education, her future medical needs. Everything. He stepped closer. Anything else? I swallowed hard, gathering my courage. I need to know if there are threats against you. Against us, if I agree to this. You mentioned enemies earlier. I need the truth about what I'd be walking into. His expression darkened. There are always threats in my world, Ellie. I won't lie to you about that, but I have safeguards. Security. You and Lily would have protection around the clock. A gilded cage? I challenged. A necessary precaution, he countered. At least initially. In time, as we transform the organization, the dangers will diminish. I nodded slowly, processing. One last condition. Whatever exists between us, whatever attraction or connection we might feel, it develops naturally. I won't be pressured or rushed. Alexander's smile was unexpectedly gentle. Despite appearances, I'm a patient man, Ellie, especially for things of true value. He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face. Take the time you need. I'll be here when you decide. The light touch sent warmth coursing through me. Despite everything, the danger, the impossibility, the sheer madness of the situation, I felt drawn to him in a way I couldn't rationalize. Was it the power he represented, the security, or something more fundamental, the recognition of a kindred spirit beneath our vastly different circumstances? I should go, I said, stepping back from his touch. Lily will be waiting. Alexander nodded. Anthony will take you home. He moved to a desk and wrote something on a small card. This is the address of a private residence in Lincoln Park. More discreet than this building. Come there when you've made your decision, whether it's yes or no. I took the card, our fingers brushing in the exchange. And if it's no, what then? Then you and Lily continue your lives, with better medical care and financial security. No strings, no repercussions. His eyes held mine steadily. I told you this wasn't conditional, Ellie. I meant it. I studied his face, searching for deception and finding none. Either he was telling the truth, or he was a better liar than anyone I'd ever encountered. Perhaps both. I need to go, I repeated, moving toward the elevator. Alexander made no move to stop me, simply watching as I called the elevator with the key card. Ellie, he said as the doors opened, whatever you decide, thank you for seeing me, the real me. The doors closed before I could respond, leaving me alone with my thoughts as the elevator descended. My mind raced with possibilities, dangers, and the memory of Alexander's touch. By the time I reached the lobby, I had made my decision. 1 week later, the private garden behind the Lincoln Park mansion bloomed with early summer flowers, their scent filling the warm evening air. I stood on the stone patio, watching as Lily laughed with her new tutor, a kind-faced woman who specialized in helping students catch up after medical absences. She looks stronger already, Alexander said. Appearing silently beside me, he handed me a glass of iced tea, his fingers lingering against mine in the exchange. The doctors say her body is responding well to the transplant, I confirmed. Better than they expected. Morgan women are resilient, he observed, the pride in his voice unmistakable. I smiled, still adjusting to this new reality, the spacious house with its private garden, the medical staff checking on Lily daily, the security detail that maintained a discreet presence at all times. Most of all, I was adjusting to Alexander's constant, steady presence in our lives. The Foundation Board approved the new Community Health Initiative, he informed me. Your proposal impressed them. Our proposal, I corrected, warmed by his inclusion of me in his legitimate business dealings from the very beginning. True to his word, he had made me a partner, not a trophy, consulting me on decisions, introducing me to key allies, explaining the complex web of his organization with complete transparency. And through it all, he had kept his promise to let whatever existed between us develop naturally. There had been no pressure, no expectations beyond my involvement in the foundation work and his ongoing plans to shift his empire toward legitimacy. But the attraction between us had only grown stronger with proximity. Each day, each conversation, each small touch had built a connection that was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. The Castellano family has accepted our invitation to discuss the waterfront development, Alexander continued, his voice professional despite the way his eyes lingered on me. That's 3 of the 5 major families now willing to collaborate on legitimate ventures. Progress, I acknowledged, taking a sip of my tea. Slow, but steady. He turned to face me fully. Are you having second thoughts, Ellie? About any of this? I considered the question seriously. The past week had been a whirlwind of changes, from our move to the Lincoln Park house to my crash course in Alexander's business operations to the delicate dance of our personal relationship. There had been moments of doubt, certainly. Moments when the enormity of what I'd agreed to threatened to overwhelm me. But there had also been moments of surprising clarity. Watching Alexander negotiate with former rivals, seeing his vision for transformation take shape, understanding the complex man behind the dangerous reputation. I had glimpsed possibilities I never could have imagined from my former life. No second thoughts, I said finally. Just adjustments. This world of yours is still new to me. Our world now, he corrected gently. His hand found mine on the stone balustrade, his touch warm and sure. Thank you for taking this leap of faith, Ellie. I turned my hand to intertwine my fingers with his, the gesture more intimate than any we had yet shared. Not faith, I said softly. Trust. There's a difference. His eyes darkened with emotion. May I? He asked, his gaze dropping to my lips. In answer, I stepped closer, eliminating the careful distance we'd maintained. His free hand came up to cup my cheek as he lowered his mouth to mine. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, so at odds with the powerful man I'd come to know. But as I responded, it deepened into something more urgent, more honest, more revealing than words could have been. When we finally broke apart, I saw vulnerability in Alexander's eyes, perhaps the first time he had truly let his guard down completely. I'm going to transform this empire, Ellie Morgan, he promised, his voice low and intense, with you beside me, into something worthy of the trust you've placed in me. As Lily's laughter floated across the garden and the Chicago skyline glittered in the distance, I realized that I had found something I never expected in Alexander Vicario's dangerous world. Not just security or purpose, but a place where both Lily and I could truly belong. We'll transform it together, I corrected, sealing the promise with another kiss as the sun set on my old life and rose on a future I never could have imagined, one where the waitress and the mafia boss rewrote their own rules.